Play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Mark Carney finding that out firsthand these days. You know, the Liberals are playing some stupid, greasy games yesterday with the whole Globe and Mail article alleging that India had something to do with Pierre Poilievre's win in the Conservative leadership race in 2022 and casting doubt on his leadership in general. We broke it down this morning. We saw what that came to, and it came to absolutely nothing. But the issue is, as we've talked about in the past, is people headline read, and they see that like, oh, see, it's because he's not getting his security clearance. He's putting Canada at risk. Oh my gosh. Mark Carney's the way. He's the truth. He's the life. And so that is what we're currently watching. And the problem is Mark Carney isn't the person to be doing that just because of all the skeletons in his closet. You're really going to come after Pierre Poilievre in foreign interference over a leadership race in 2022 when we know what you've been doing? We know what the Liberals have been up to. We know how they've been corrupted by the CCP. Really? Is that what you want? Do you want to play that game? And well, that's the game they chose to play. Poilievre came at him yesterday saying, yeah, let's talk about the $250 million you secured from the central bank in China as the Canadian economic advisor. Tell us how that went. Tell us how close to Beijing you are. Tell us how close you are to Xi Jinping. Tell us how we can even possibly trust you if that's how you play and that's what you've been up to. How can we do it? And then he went boom, 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 lit him up. And so that was just part one. And then part two came out today. But before we get into that, I would very much appreciate if you just like, share, subscribe. It means the world, especially at this point in time when the election is so critical. It is so important this information gets out to everybody, as many people as we can get it out to as possible. So it'd be very much appreciated. Now let's get into the story. Mulclair hopped on Vashi Kapil's Power Play on CTV. If you remember his famous interview from July saying, I agree with Pierre Poilievre not getting a security clearance. Well, they asked him again, and he went on a 3-minute tirade saying the exact same thing and doubling down what he said in terms of his support for Pierre Poilievre. And he brings up some very interesting points in this.
CTV News Channel. I agree completely with Pierre Poilievre on this. I believe he is completely right. You do not accept to play this mugs game where you restrain your ambit and your ability to act as leader of the official opposition, which is a constitutional role to hold the government to account. And this game where you have people in the hierarchy of the security establishment saying, oh, he really should come in, but then he's not allowed to talk about it anymore. Really? Didn't we just have a commission of inquiry headed up by Madame Justice Hogue, who put all of this stuff away and said there might have been a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but all of a sudden we're talking about whether Poilievre actually got the 68%. What, maybe it was 67%? I mean, this is madness, you know, to try to make this an issue in a campaign that is so serious for the country, to try to go back to this stuff and to try to complain about Poilievre wanting to do his constitutional duty. He wants to do his job of holding the government to account. And no, he's not going to walk into that bear trap that consists of getting a security clearance, seeing documents that could be important and not talking about it. By the way, when I was leader of the opposition, Vashi, a certain Stephen Harper would call me personally. His staff would give me a setup, called me once during a wedding reception and said, I've got to talk to you. And it was Harper himself saying, look, there's this and this and this that's going to roll out in the next few days. It's going to be in the news. I want you to know about it. That's what a prime minister does with his or her leader of the opposition. You talk. Nobody had to make me swear any oath. I was still the leader of the opposition, but I had no intention of going in front of a camera and talking about it. This bit about Poilievre somehow not being up to snuff. When Carney went down that road today, I think he made a big mistake. He's been on the high road all along. He's got these tyros around him who keep saying, oh, use this bit of dirt, use that bit of dirt. Really? So all of a sudden, what did he get snapped right back at him by Poilievre? Oh, let's talk about when you were in Beijing, talking with the Chinese Communist Party, borrowing hundreds of millions of dollars for your private company. It has nothing to do with this campaign any more than the bit about supposed Indian government interference. It's the tricks that they use on each other. What the Liberals learned today is that Poilievre's very good at this game, and they better choose their subject a little bit more carefully next time because they didn't score any points today, as far as I'm concerned.
He lays that out pretty clear. Doing what they did was only going to result in one thing, and they were going to get snapped up, as he says. And Pierre Poilievre came at him very hard on the Beijing issue. And now the question then ended up being about, Mark Carney, his Beijing ties, this, that, the other, what's been going on with all his investments. But there was one piece of the statement that I thought was eye-opening, and it really lent itself to the time that we're currently dealing with. Again, Mr. Mulclair was the leader of the NDP when they were the official opposition against Stephen Harper and the Conservatives. And hear what he said there. Stephen Harper called him saying, hey, this stuff is coming down the pipe. I need you to know about it just so you're aware before it goes out. I think you need to know about it. And that Mulclair is like, that's how a prime minister deals with their official opposition. The Liberals have never, ever given Poilievre that decency. They've never really ever worked together at any point from what I can see. It's always been combative. It's always been in your face. And then you wonder why Poilievre's come at you so hard in the House of Commons. It's because you've acted in bad faith this whole time. And the Liberals have shown they've not changed with Mark Carney. They come in with the stupid security clearance stuff that clearly everyone knows has nothing to do with anything, has no consequence on this election, has no consequence on Pierre Poilievre as a candidate, has no consequence on the Conservative Party. But they're going to keep pushing it because they know it gets clicks. They know it gets their base going. It knows the lie continues to get snapped up by this crazy liberal base. It is quite frankly frustrating to watch this go down. And I love that Mulclair pointed this out, saying, yeah, this is how a prime minister acts in good faith with their official opposition. This is how this actually is supposed to work. And it hasn't been working that way. And so for Carney to come in and then leak the stupid story to the Globe and Mail, and which we have established is just a propaganda arm of the Liberal Party of Canada, he deserved to get exactly what he got yesterday with Beijing. And this is what I'm alluding to as we go into the story today, is it didn't end there. Carney effed around and found out real quick, because today's news cycle wasn't about the senior program that Pierre Poilievre is putting out, which we'll touch in here shortly. It wasn't about any policy that he announced here in the Maritimes. There's nothing about that. Do you know what it was about today? Today it was about the green fund holdings that he worked on behalf of Brookfield and funneled them through to Bermuda. That's what the conversation was about today. And it looks good on him in the process. You want to screw around and try to push false narratives? Well, guess what? We're coming at you 10 times harder on this now. Because now the news cycle today, even the CBC covered it today. Mark Carney's Bermuda holdings. That's what the conversation's been about today, and that's exactly what we're going to cover and put the pressure on these jabronis. Carney's green funds at Brookfield used Bermuda Tax Haven to attract investors. In his time at Brookfield Asset Management, Liberal leader Mark Carney personally co-chaired 2 investment funds dedicated to the transition to a net zero carbon economy worth a total of $25 billion. Those funds were registered in Bermuda, among other locations, allowing investors to benefit from significant tax advantages, according to information obtained by Radio Canada. The funds created while Carney was on Brookfield's board of directors are the Brookfield Global Transition Fund, which is worth $15 billion, and the Brookfield Global Transition Fund 2, which is worth $10 billion, launched in 2021 and 2024, respectively. According to the Ontario Business Registry, the funds are registered in Bermuda under the names BGTF, Bermuda GP Limited, and BGTF2, Bermuda GP Limited. In both cases, the provincial registry indicates that the governing jurisdiction for the corporations is located in Bermuda. And what happened today? Jagmeet went off about it today. Michael Barrett was talking about it today. All the Conservative MPs are talking about it today. That's all that's been in the news today, is Mark Carney and his dealing in Bermuda. Next time, pick better advisors, Mark Carney. Maybe next time push back on the Gerald Butts of the world and Katie Telfords of the world, who think it was a good idea to push the security clearance stuff. Well, guess what? Now this Bermuda stuff isn't going anywhere, and you're going to get called out for exactly what you did. And this is the thing here, folks. Mark Carney was on the campaign trail in Windsor today. And as I said, since this is the news cycle, what did he get hit with? He got hit with a question about this specifically, and this was his answer.
Explain in the case of those Brookfield funds, like what was the argument for registering the funds in Bermuda? Is it ethical to do that? And is it something as Prime Minister that you'd have to crack down on? I'm not sure if it's a problem, but is that something that you'd have to crack down on?
I think the important thing, Tom, is that the flow through of the funds go to Canadian entities who then pay the taxes appropriately, as opposed to taxes being paid multiple times before they get there. So that's how we have the structure. That's the structure that all of our pension funds, par exemple, the Caisse de dépôt, or Ontario teachers, or OMERS, municipal employees, or all the big pension funds in Canada, which are very successful, which protect union workers in many cases. I'm speaking of union workers today, and supply to them. It's those entities and their employees who are covered. So the structures work for that effect.
So to make this very clear, what he did and was involved in wasn't illegal. It's not tax evasion, it's tax avoidance, which isn't illegal. You can go ahead and do that. It's actually smart tax planning. You structure it in such a way so you minimize the amount of taxes you're paying through your investments. It's kind of how the system works. It's how it goes. But this is the issue, folks, is when you're running saying Canada is not broken, when you're running saying there's nothing really to fix, we'll claw back 1% on the lower tax bracket for you. When you are moving your corporations from Canada down to New York City, when you are funneling money through to these Bermuda corporations or these holdings that are in Bermuda, it shows one thing only, that Canada's tax laws are not favorable. There are better countries for that in the world. And the fact that Mark Carney hasn't put out really anything saying he's going to overhaul the tax system here, not going to overhaul corporate tax, not going to address the significant unfairness in our tax system and how it operates and how it's been completely robbing Canadians blind. Not going to talk about any of those things. But do you know what him doing the Bermuda thing does? Is he sees the exact same thing that you see, that our tax system absolutely sucks and is not favorable to businesses. And so this is kind of, he talked about it here and he gave a very political answer. Well, they still go through Canadian entities who then pay taxes and then goes to Bermuda, yada, yada. Just technically true. That's how it's structured. Yes. But it's structured that way to pay the least amount of taxes possible. You could be paying more. As the NDP exposed just a couple of weeks ago, that Brookfield was one of the biggest tax dodgers in Canada. Again, it's smart tax planning. It's aggressive tax planning. But when you're running for prime minister on the idea that everything's fine and we're going to probably tax you more, we're going to put carbon tax on industry, you're going to pay more for it while you move your corporations out of this country. But this story and what's happening around it just adds more to the shadiness around this man. That he actually doesn't care about this country. He doesn't care what happens to you. Doesn't care how people's lives can improve here. No, the only policies he's ever pushed are actually how he's going to extract more value out of you as just a financial asset in this country. That's all you're seen as. And this will follow him for a good chunk of this campaign because you decided to play dirty politics with the stupid Global Mail story yesterday. But then on top of this, to add, Pierre Poilievre announced a pretty great plan for seniors. He's allowing working seniors to earn up to $34,000 a year, tax-free, $10,000 more than it currently is. And he's going to allow seniors the option of keeping savings growing in RSPs until age 73, up from 71. And then protect OAS, GIS, and CPP by keeping retirement age at 65. That's his promise to seniors that he announced today. Just getting an additional $10,000 tax-free for seniors is pretty huge for those on fixed incomes. When it comes to those over 65, there's a part of me, again, I'm not an economist, so there's a lot of things you kind of have to address. There's numbers and nuances you have to deal with. But there's a big part of me at the heart of me is you over 65, your retirement, or even over the age of 70. Any money you receive, I think should be tax-free. You spent years of your life paying into the system. I think you should not have to pay any more tax the rest of your life. I think that's only fair. But that's just, that's a radical idea. But this, again, it's a step in the right direction to see where things are going. At least someone is trying to make the tax system work a little bit better for everybody. Rather than Mark Carney saying, yeah, we'll go 15% down to 14% in the lowest tax bracket. And we're going to be adding carbon tax to our industry here. And essentially going to make everything continue to cost a lot of money. That's my promise. We'll see how it goes. That's how this game's working, folks. That's how this is going down. This Bermuda story will continue to develop. He'll be on the defensive for at least a good 2 to 3 days here. And he's going to have to give a serious answer on this. He gave it a political answer here, but more details are going to emerge. And he's going to have to answer those ideas. Exactly the same questions I brought up. When the CBC's covering it, you know it's going to come at him pretty hard and furious. But anyways, have yourselves a good one. I'm out.